B, Western Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies Annual Conference, Commissioner Lent, followed by Commissioner Capurro, and then Secretary and Mayor.
Well, I along with Commissioner Capurro, and there was a lot of subjects and topics, and I'm just going to cover a couple of the main ones here, and then Commissioner Capurro can pick up on it. But one of the big topics is states' rights to control wildlife versus feds, and with the wolf situation and the lawsuits in Montana and Wyoming. And I sat and met with the Deputy Director of the Department of Interior Fish and Wildlife Service, Dan Ash, and he's #2 guy. And we were sitting there with Wyoming, Utah, Arizona, and Idaho commissioners, and he basically they put on that they're friends of us, of the states, and they're really not, because like in Wyoming, 80% of the when they went with the wolf, 80% of the state is predator, where you can shoot them on sight, and the rest of it is with a tag, the controlled hunt. They're a sport animal around Yellowstone Park. And if you look at what the wolves are doing to Yellowstone Park, they're wiped out completely. They have 2 calves per 100 cows or something, and they're going to wipe out the whole elk herd. And for the first time in the history of Wyoming, they went to a draw system on that herd outside Yellowstone. There used to be so many elk that it was just first come, first served, and they wiped it out and they put it on a draw. And he just flat said, that is too restrictive. He said, you've got to put more of the state into a controlled hunt, and you got to take less predator. And they want more areas for wolves to roam, and then Malloy, the judge in Montana, and this was just before he ruled, and Idaho went ahead with they sold 30,000 wolf tags last year, and plus a couple thousand non-resident. That's resident. So there's a tremendous amount of interest, and so now they're going to have to shut the season down. It's just in a big turmoil. But basically, we had a lot of discussion on the states' rights. We're supposed to regulate wildlife in our state, and yet we have the feds come in and tell us what we can do and what we can't do, and that's going to be a big issue. And there's a lawsuit in Alaska on killing on an island down in the Aleutians, Unimac, and the lawsuit in Wyoming, and I think the commissioners from the various states have got to get together and work out some kind of a plan, and so I think this commission is going to be active in that, and if you got to do a lawsuit against them, you got to do it, but we'll be talking with the director on that. But that's a real big issue. We're getting so we can't even regulate the wildlife in our state. The feds are coming down and telling us what to do, and big problem in all the states, and that's one thing I learned. The states have something in common there. And then another item that was big, I say the wolves were really a big issue there, and then the predators were also a big issue about predation and what it's doing, and wind generation, where they do wind generation. You got to put the windmills where there's wind and there's no transmission lines. So when they put transmission lines right across habitat for sage grouse gnat, and then you get the perch predation from the ravens, and they don't care. They just want the power for the transmission connecting. We got a big transmission line going now from Vegas all the way up through White Pine County, as you already know. And so that's a big problem where they put the transmission lines. And so there's a lot of talk, but I think one of the biggest things is predation, wolves, and the states' rights issue that I got out of it. And I'll turn it over to Commissioner Capurro for comments on it, because we sort of split up the meeting. There's just too many meetings for one to go. There's a mule deer and a sheep, and they had a diseased sheep, and they had a mule deer, and they all are at the same time, so we have to divide up which one we attend. And so Commissioner Capurro got a little different spin on some of the items.
Thank you, Vice Chairman Lent. Excuse me. It was a real experience for me to attend that meeting, from the standpoint of the fact that it reinforced to me that all states have pretty much the same problems as we have, except for the issue of wolves. And hopefully that's an issue that we won't have to face, but it's one we should be prepared for. But he mentions that there were quite a few different committees, and I'll just read off which ones there were and which ones I attended, at least part-time. We kind of moved around to get a sense of what was going on in each area. WAWA has 19 states and 4 Canadian provinces. North Dakota is the only one that apparently does not have a board or a commission. And so we did have several sessions in which we met very closely with Arizona and Utah commissioners and discussed mutual problems. And out of that came the idea of having a joint commission meeting with Utah, which we'll try to schedule at some point in time to discuss issues of mutual importance to both of us. And that, and the central issue is that we all have problems with the feds. There's no question about it. That trying to delineate what the authority of the states is with respect to managing our own wildlife on our own lands, whether they be federal lands or not, they're still contained within the state, in this case in Nevada. The survey of the WAWA commissioners, which was part of the the New Technologies Committee, was that we should survey all WAWA members and to petition Congress to address the issue and give us a straight story as to what our responsibilities and abilities are. We had a commissioners committee meeting, which actually met, I guess, at least twice, in which a lot of different issues were discussed, one of which was the issue of energy production. Big deal in Wyoming in that, because here's what's happening, that California, with that huge need for energy in that state, doesn't want to produce, they don't want to defile their own state to get the power that they need to be able to continue as the 6th largest country in the world, which leaves them looking to others to produce their power and to have to take on their issues in an environmental nature. Here's the problem that you run into with some of these so-called alternative energy sources. They're intermittent, and the problem with that is when you try to harness wind power, in which Wyoming has a lot of wind, so do we, but you harness the wind power, you can't store it. So what happens is it's produced at the high production time is at a time when they can't use it in California. So there's some disconnect between how you're going to actually be able to provide steady power to other states in that, and then all the attendant environmental issues that come with it. The issue of birds and perching and the like with transmission lines, problems with interaction between the windmills and birds. The Lex, when you start cutting into the earth, going across as we are with the Ruby pipeline and that's only one example, that you're disturbing the earth in areas where birds are basically either nest or mate. And so you're also introducing a human element that isn't there all the time. So we've got some problems to work out, hopefully to convince both the feds and other states that we have to be able to address our own issues. One of the sessions had to do with how you deal with predators, how other states deal with problem animals. And to a state, none of them allows a second chance. So if you have a problem bear or a problem cat in any other state, they simply euthanize them. There is no transplanting because the studies have shown that it doesn't make a difference how far away you take them. Within a couple of weeks, they're right back where they were. And that causes, they have no fear of humans in many cases because in California's case, they haven't been hunted. Bears haven't been hunted in Nevada either, so that's where you get a lot of interaction. I heard an interesting story this morning at breakfast on that. If you've ever had a bear peeking in your window, it'd make a believer out of you probably. But what it brought to mind is the fact that we have to have a consistent policy with regard to how we treat predators and problem animals. And we have to understand that there are problems involved in the area of predation that need to be addressed in probably a more consistent fashion than we have now. They had a joint directors commissioners meeting. They had a use of new technologies meeting, mule deer working group, wild sheep working group, private lands access, habitat committee meetings, human wildlife conflicts committee meeting, western bird conservation committee meeting, and state, federal, tribal communications, human wildlife conflicts committee meeting, and that's out of which came the information regarding the no second chance nature of most of the states. I think what it shows is that we really need to monitor these types of commission meetings to find out what's going on in other states, to interact when we're not meeting with other commissioners to find out how they are really dealing with the issues that they have, their relationship with their departments and the like. I would thoroughly enjoy doing it again. Contrary to popular belief, I didn't take any side trips or anything else. My wife and I went up and went up the day before the meeting and left the day after, or the day at the end of the meeting. So we got a lot out of it. We're able to assimilate information that I think will be helpful to us in dealing with other states in the future.
Mr. Mayor?
Outstanding reports. That's why I've been telling the commission since I've been director, it's so important for us to be involved in WAFWA and OFWA. For the new commissioners, the Association of Fish and Wildlife. The Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies is the umbrella organization for the nation and candidates. It used to be called the International. Within the OFWA format are the regional associations. WAFWA is one of them with 23 states. The 19 plus 4. And the difference between OFWA and WAFWA, from a committee perspective, a lot of work gets done at WAFWA. I'm chairman of the Bird Conservation Committee, which has all the sage grouse stuff. The mule deer, you guys sat in on the mule deer work group. Those guys have done some tremendous work over the years. And all the directors commit staff time to have them work on that. The sheep is a good example. The other thing that maybe the public doesn't know is that when we find an issue that is really important, like bighorn sheep or sage grouse, the states actually self-impose an assessment to hire a coordinator. Obviously, we have one upland game person, Sean Espinosa. I can't assign him to do the staff work for the WAFWA committee. That's basically a full-time job, just coordinating sage grouse stuff, in the West. So we do assessments and we hire people to be coordinators, and we're very selective on those things that we do select. The Bighorn Sheep Committee really did some great work. We also we'll look at as kind of cathartic. The directors get together for a retreat. We had one session on just problem wildlife, like you were talking about. Every state does it a little bit different because they have different state rules that what they can and can't do. And we really focused on where we screwed up, quite frankly, because I'd rather not screw up with something that happened here, that if my neighbor in Utah, like with the bear that killed and ate that 12-year-old 2 years ago, you know, we don't make the same mistakes. And as a result of that, Mr. Capurro, I went back and looked to find our dangerous wildlife policy. It was woefully inadequate, and we redid that, and everybody's got that in their possession. They know exactly what to do when we have those kinds of incidents. So it does produce a lot of good things. I will leave you with one thing about sage grouse. It was very disheartening, and we're developing a strategy now. I'm the national chairman for the Executive Oversight Committee for sage grouse, and when in the EOC meeting, the BLM got up to give their report, they informed us that they were cutting their budget for sage grouse by 1%. And my question was, well, were you asleep? I mean, did you not recognize or remember that, you know, we have warranted but precluded? And the answer is, well, we don't you know, give money to ourselves. You need to talk to Congress. So we're through the WAFWA and the OFWA organizations. We're putting pressure on the Secretary Salazar. I just signed off on a letter for the WAFWA president to Salazar and the director of the Fish and Wildlife Service and the BLM. You know, what's up? NRCS came up with $21 million to work with private landowners for sage grouse. Well, if NRCS can do that, who's a minor player, quite frankly, in the sage grouse world, what's with the BLM? So anyway, it's important that we be involved in those things. We didn't send hardly anybody this year. A lot of our staff have been key in some of these subcommittees and help with making sure that the work that they produce is going to benefit Nevada. So anyway, Guy, you did an excellent job of reporting out what happened. So.
Okay, Mr. Capurro and then Mr. Lent.
Yes, one thing I'd like to do is give a big shout out to the state of Alaska. I thought they did an absolutely excellent job of hosting this affair and assigning people to help out. That was one of the best run conventions I think I have ever attended. I also would remind you that we do have a problem that other states don't have, and it creates more of a problem for Nevada in the area of bears, and that is Lake Tahoe. Because of the joint nature of Lake Tahoe with the state of California, which does not do anything with bears or cougars, that creates problems for us. And add to that the Bear League and other individuals who have more time on their hands than they should have. And what we end up with is trying to do the right thing with respect to problem bears, but to be sensitive to the feelings of people who think that bears are the greatest thing since Swiss cheese. So it's a real problem. Tahoe is a much bigger problem than I think any other state experiences with regard to bear control.
Mr. Lent?
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to add a couple of things, and I think the director forgot that I heard a lot of comments about Dag New and her presentation on the wild horses from these other states and the good job that she did back in Washington, D.C., and the western states really appreciated that. And the other thing I wanted to mention, and I will be bringing it up to the Predator Committee, is we sat through a symposium of 3 experts on Alaska's predator plan. Tremendous plan, and of course it's in the legislature. And just briefly, it goes that if the biologists, area biologists, are responsible for their area, and if there's some kind of a problem in the reproduction or the population goes down, they got these triggers. And the last trigger is what they call immediate response, and that throws in airplanes, predator control, and everything. But they determine what the problem is, whether it's habitat, whether it's drought, or predators. They make a determination, and then they have a tremendous response that they are obligated to go through to solve the problem. And so I've got a pretty good handle on the way Alaska does it. I'll be bringing that up to predator control or predator committee, and then it'll probably be brought to the commission. So I hope that all the cabs and everybody out there interested, it's a presentation I think we should rewrite some of our predator control procedures after that, and it was a very, very interesting presentation how they handle it, because they got some big problems up there with predation and how they solve it. It's real interesting. Real complicated issue. They don't just go out, kill predators for the heck of it, only when they need to, and they've got a pretty intense program, and I've got some good literature on that I'll be bringing up, and the county boards will be getting it from the Predator Committee. And thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, let's move on with the